Welcome to the Driven Dental Podcast, where all things dental drive our curiosity to have meaningful conversations about self-development, business scalability, and prioritizing people over profits. This podcast will leave you ready to drive your practice to new levels of success. I am Matt Robinson, COO and co-founder of Operation Dental, writer of the Driven Dental Practice, and your host. Dentistry is about its people. Let's hear from them. Welcome to another edition of the Driven Dental Podcast. I'm Matt Robinson, the COO of Operation Dental, and I'm here today with Vanessa Challenger, who is our second regional manager. And I wanted to meet with Vanessa today because she has shown incredible growth, both in her personal and professional life throughout her time with us. So I wanted to get more insight on that with her and see what has worked for her and hopefully can help other people. So Vanessa, if you don't mind, if you can give a brief background on where you're from and how you got into dentistry.
Okay. So I'm originally from the Virgin Islands, and I moved to the US when I was 17 to go to college. Interesting story. I started in the dental field working at a call center. And then I felt like I wasn't growing in the call center. I loved being able to help people at the office level, even though I wasn't at the office. And I was actually training everyone that was coming into the call center when I started there. After there, I felt that I needed to move on and actually go to a dental practice, and it's when I started with a large DSO company as a receptionist.
So you were in college while you were working at the call center?
No, yes, actually I was. I was in college working and working at the same time. So I would go to school in the evenings and work during the day.
Okay. So then you went to a large DSO, and what was it like there?
What was it like? I definitely appreciate the experience that I had. Like, I feel like it has molded me into the person that I am today. But I did deal with a lot of crazy people. People who didn't have any respect for the employees. The management team not appreciating who worked for them. I would always consider myself as a hard worker. And I gave it my all every single time. And I didn't appreciate how I was being treated working there. I also trained a lot of people working at the DSO company. But I got to a point where I felt, again, that I was being stagnant. I wasn't happy coming to work. I couldn't provide the customer service that I wanted to patients. Because it was all about the numbers, all about, the money coming into the office. So I felt that I couldn't give that customer service, and I was feeling very unhappy. I would go home and just be so frustrated. And I remember my husband just saying, "Hey, I think it's time for you to go somewhere else."
So how long were you there?
I was working with them for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I did.
I didn't know it was that long.
I lasted that long. Honestly, because I liked, the working. Like, I liked the dental field. I just didn't like my environment.
Okay. So were you an office manager there?
No, I was their front desk.
Okay. And you were still training people?
Yes. We became the training office for the Orlando region. And I was training all of the front desk and not being compensated for it.
So then after you left there, you went to eventually one of our practices, Conway Oaks?
Correct.
Okay.
I was actually still working with the DSO, but I did have Fridays off, so I went and I interviewed with the private practice just to see if there was a difference between working at a private practice and working with a DSO group. I initially thought that, yes, like, this is different because you are able to give that attention to detail, that customer service, and and have a relationship with the patients. And that was important for me because I always wanted to feel that I was helping people.
Gotcha. So that was the first private practice you had worked at.
Correct.
And then how long were you there before we came in?
About 6 months.
Okay.
So it was very nerve-wracking because I had just made the switch. I was driving, when I worked at the DSO, I was driving 15 minutes to work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I made the switch to go to a private practice, I was driving 35 minutes to go to work because I felt that my happiness came first, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working at Conway Oaks. At first, they were only open 2 days a week because the doctor was, you know, working at 2 practices. So he would spend part-time at Conway and the other days at the other location. So, you know, when they brought me on, they were looking to grow the practice, and that was something that I was interested in to helping them do. I was interested in getting the numbers up, showing that even though he was working 2 days, that we could be super productive those 2 days. And then the other 2 days was me trying to brainstorm different ways of how I can continue building the practice so that he could come full time to Conway Oaks.
Right. So you were the office manager there, essentially, or
No, I wasn't.
They didn't really have titles?
I was still their front desk.
Okay.
They talked about the possibility of me growing into the role of office manager, which now I know that they were already talking with you to sell the practice. But that was something that was very interesting to me, the growth opportunity.
Got it. So then this is 2018 we're talking about. And then we purchased the practice in October of 2018.
Correct.
So what were your feelings when we first purchased the practice? What was going through your head?
I thought that I had made the mistake to leave the DSO because I wasn't sure of what was going to happen. First of all, the doctor that owned the practice was being very sneaky about selling the practice. So I saw little things happen there, here and there, and, you know, him sneaking through the back door and, you know, taking some of the equipment or manuals, you know, then credit card machine not being able to work. So I remember mentioning to an established hygienist that had worked there for a really long time, letting her know, like, hey, I've been noticing a little bit, you know, of stuff going around. I don't know if we're all going to have jobs once you come back, because she was about to go on vacation for 2 weeks. So I was like, I don't know if we're going to have jobs once you get back. So I immediately started applying for jobs. I was very unsure of having a job there at Conway Oaks. And because I didn't have such a long relationship with them, I knew that there wasn't any loyalty there to me from them. So fast forward a little bit, she did have a conversation with the doctor, and that day Dr. Kelly and our new doctor showed up to have a conversation with us during lunch.
Got it.
Yes, so it was very interesting. Still wasn't sure of what was going to be the final outcome, even though, you know, Dr. Kelly told us, you know, everyone is going to keep their jobs. I just wasn't sure of like what change was going to come and how it was going to come, and what was just the uncertainty of different scenarios that could have happened. And because I was the newest employee there, I just didn't feel like I had job security at the moment.
So how many employees were there when you were there? Wasn't many.
No, it was just one. So we had one full-time hygienist, one dental assistant, our doctor, myself, and one additional
insurance coordinator.
Correct.
Okay. And to make this even more interesting, there was a dental practice literally next door to yours that we also purchased the same time, and we were merging that over into to your practice. So we were a young company to begin with, and we had maybe done one merge before. We had done a merge the year before, but it was still another added dynamic that made this more complicated. So from your perspective, what was Operation Dental like in 2018? And you can be completely honest.
Um, in 2018, I felt there wasn't, I mean, there was communication, but not a lot of communication as to what exactly was happening, how it was happening, and what was the plan. And I mean, I've learned that not everything needs a plan since, indirect, like, yes, you have to plan, but I'm very structured in that way, and
Mm-hmm.
just the unknown was very hard because it's like, oh, we'll get to that once the problem arises, like, and I was like, no, I want to avoid the problem before it arises.
Mm-hmm.
uh Specifically with that merge, it was very, very interesting because it was two different, complete different offices. Like, the we had an older doctor that was, a private practice owner for years. His staff, that was used to doing things a certain way, and trying to just merge two complete different practices and patient base, because their patients were interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say in a bad way, but it was just different.
Mm-hmm.
The way they handled situations was very different as well. And just the employees, I felt like the culture that they had over there wasn't a healthy environment
Mm-hmm.
for all that worked there.
So basically, you were put in a situation where I think you were the acting office manager, kind of
Yes.
from day one.
Yes.
Okay. So you were put in your first management position
Mm-hmm.
in charge of a mess.
Yes, it was a mess.
So how did you begin to handle it when there wasn't a plan? Because we were so new as a company too, that for me, I was just taking things day by day and kind of phone call by phone call.
Yeah.
So how did you get kind of rooted in there and just take a deep breath and say, okay, this is what we need to do?
Well, I will also mention that I was the youngest employee. So that was hard in itself, being the youngest employee and now having to direct
Mm-hmm.
the older employees and manage them.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I had approached it initially was building relationships with them and trying to get to know them so that I could be able to train them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just my initial like go-to plan. I was like, let me figure out what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and from there I can try to like teach them without them feeling offended or getting upset with me.
Mm-hmm.
Which was also difficult because some people didn't appreciate the feedback, or
Mm-hmm.
like negativity started to come out. Like, I remember we had to go through a couple front desks just to find the right fit for that office. So yeah.
So this was your first management experience then, right?
For sure.
Okay.
Like, I've always had like a lead position at jobs, but never officially a management position. So I remember sitting with you and just telling you that I wanted to grow, and you mentioning like, hey, if you do the work, you'll get there,
Mm-hmm.
And that was our initial conversation. You letting me know, like, just do the hard work, and I'll be sure to compensate you and get you there.
Mm-hmm. So, like, when you're going through this, were you kind of going back and forth in your mind whether this was going to work out or not, or how were you pretty like, no, I'm going to stay here and see this through?
Yeah, after meeting you and having more one-on-one conversations with you, I felt better. I felt that you were a very humble person, and that you were honest. So that in itself helped calm me down and say, let me look at this as a challenge, as something exciting and new. He's telling me he's going to help me grow. I've never had the opportunity where someone has said, hey, you want to grow? Let's go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself, like, I knew my capabilities and what I was willing to put in but I don't think I've ever had anyone see that or value what I was bringing to the table.
Interesting. Well, what was awesome about you from the beginning was that I felt like you took complete ownership of that practice. And even though it was very, very difficult and there were ups and downs for sure, I always had like a peace about that practice because I knew you were the stability there
Mm-hmm.
that was going to make it okay. And then the doctor that came on board was really good with patients. Thank goodness. And I think that the two of you kind of tag teaming is what was the glue to that practice, along with the hygienists that had been there for such a long time. So what did your growth look like? And at that point in time, I guess you're just concerned with the practice, right? You're not as concerned with like your personal development as much. It's just like this practice is a mess. Like nothing else matters until this is fixed. Is that
Exactly.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
And for me, it was super important to build a relationship with the doctor and getting to know. I learned a lot from him. Like I learned a lot from Dr. Lyman. He educates in a way, and that dentistry becomes so easy. And even though I was in the dental field, like he took it to another level for me to understand dentistry from the clinical aspect. So for me, it was very important for anything we were going to achieve, we had to do it together. We had a lot of conversations. Not all the time we met eye to eye. They were very tough conversations we had to have, but the respect was always there. And we always knew that we wanted the best for Conway.
So at the practice level, then what were you focusing on that would make the most impact on the practice?
For me was making sure that customer service stayed 100% there, like providing a service that they wouldn't find at the DSO level, but also when it came to the private practice, still keeping it the feel of the private practice, but more structured. So we went into schedules, looking at the schedules, like how can we build a schedule where we're still providing excellent care, but still being productive at the same time. I remember going in and like figuring out with Dr. Lyman, like timing, once the patient comes in, like how soon do they get called to the back? That is one of his biggest pet peeves. He would be staring at that schedule, and if he saw that patient check in, he's running to go find out why they haven't been called to the back. So that in itself, like making sure, because at DSOs, a patient could wait 2-3 hours, but we wanted to be different where that patient's time is being valued. So that in itself was like the initial motivation of like helping to build the practice at that time.
So once the practice got a little more established, do you remember how long it was before we started discussing you going into more of a regional position?
Well, I would say it was like 3 months, and then I officially got the office manager title, because at first I was showing you guys what I was willing to bring to the table. And I remember 3 months after you guys started, I got promoted to the office manager title. And then, I don't think I've ever told you this, but at home, I was having conversations with my husband. I was like, this is a small company, and I can see myself growing into a leadership position, like continue growing with them. And I remember telling him I would like to be a regional. And 3 months after that, so now it's 6 months of working with you guys, I was offered the position, or the possibility of the position, by you. I remember you taking me into the back office and saying, hey, I really see your growth, and I think that we could make something happen by putting you in a regional position. And as the company continues to grow, I want you by my side. And that really impacted me because I was like, here I was talking about it at home
Mm-hmm.
and never thought that the possibility would have come in such a short time
Mm-hmm.
and so fast. And exactly how I envisioned it, like me becoming an office manager and then moving up, is how it happened.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, what was at that point? How long were you at the practice still before we were able to grow enough to make that happen, you think?
So I think that at first I became a hybrid where I was a
Okay.
manager at both Conway and Dr. Phillips. So I wasn't officially able to leave Conway, but I was also managing the new location at Dr.
That's
Phillips.
right.
So that was an experience on its own. Like, I was so excited for the opportunity. I knew it was something that I wanted to do, but I remember crying every single day coming home because of like
The
the
stress?
stress level that um the employees and just the staff at that time, because they were feeling stressed. I feel like a lot of things just arose at the same time,
Mm.
and I just didn't want to feel like I was failing the team or you.
So going back to like management, I guess you
Mm-hmm.
said you had a hard time because you were younger than a lot
Yes.
of the employees, which I think is pretty common. It's been common in my life. How did you overcome that, and what other managerial issues did you have at the practice level that then you had to transition to the regional?
I think that at the practice level, employees were just being very needy. And, my I have an open call. Like, my phone is open for anyone. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell that to every single employee that I interview and speak to. Like, they can call me at any point in time. But I think as you get more employees, because Conway was super small and I had already established a relationship with that team,
Mm-hmm.
that adding more employees and them just calling on a regular with issues just became like very chaotic.
Yes.
And it didn't matter the time. They would call, and
Mm-hmm.
again, open phone for anyone
Yep.
that needs help, or but it just became a lot really fast
Mm-hmm.
at that office.
So how did you deal then with when you started adding other offices and more stresses? How did you divide what your day-to-day tasks were as far as kind of management goes versus being the listening ear of if there's problems, people calling you at
Hmm.
all times of day and night and weekends?
I think one of the things that really helped was not being a part of the office, as in not including me myself as someone that has to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the beginning as regionals, and I would still say today, we do become a part of the practice in the initial stage. Like, we go in every single day and we get dirty, like we answer calls, we have to do all those things so that we can help train the team. Because I am a firm believer that you just can't walk into a place and demand or tell them this is how you have to do it. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like you have to do it and show them. Uh and you get more respect and build incredible relationships with the employees because you are willing to take the time
Mm-hmm.
to teach them. So what I think that was one of the hardest parts, because I still wanted them to feel that I'm still helping them, but it was becoming nearly impossible with all the offices that we were
Mm-hmm.
managing at the time.
Right.
So it's like separating ourselves and saying, okay, let someone else do this task,
Mm-hmm.
and having them to start thinking as owners.
Right.
Having them to do, like, I think one of the biggest things that I speak with the employees about is that, hey, this is what brings money to the table at home, right? And if we're not being productive at the office level, then how do we even sustain our jobs? And I think that sometimes it's harsh to think of it that way, like, hey, I have to work harder, but it's the truth of reality. Like, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our employees have been able to take that ownership mentality.
Mm-hmm. What are the rewards when you see other people working as hard as they possibly can? No, taking into account, like, you are a practice manager yourself,
Mm-hmm.
so you have your way of doing things, but then everybody's different, so you have to train
Mm-hmm.
differently and talk to everybody how it best would help them.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your philosophy in training other people, knowing that you've done that same work yourself, but they might do it slightly different?
Well, I would say that in the beginning it was difficult because I did want everyone to do it the same way I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I've came to realization that it doesn't matter so much how they do it, as long as they're getting the same result.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see that there's different management styles or different ways that you can do things. And I'm more now, after like going through all the growing pains, I know now that it's okay um, to allow them to try.
Mm-hmm.
Allow them to try. And if it works, awesome. Let's bring this to the other practices and see if it also works for them. And if it doesn't, it's like, well, at least we tried.
Mm-hmm.
And we know if it worked or didn't. I think also it makes me very passionate when I am interviewing, because I'm able to explain everything that I've been through. Well, starting as a front desk, working my way up to management. So it makes me excited to see, or when someone tells me that they want to grow, I'm telling them, well, this is a place. This is a place for you to grow. As long as you're willing to put the work in,
Mm-hmm.
we will see it, and you will get rewarded.
Mm-hmm. How can somebody grow in a company without only thinking of themselves?
It's very hard because not everyone has that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people obviously want to grow, but they don't realize that in order for you to grow, you have to create relationships with your team, with your leadership team, your management. It's very important for you to self-develop. In the beginning stages of my regional life, I wanted to read, but it just wasn't a part of my agenda because things just felt so hectic. Everything was so new. And we were literally writing the role of the regional managers because there wasn't any regional managers before us. So I remember calling you and asking you, like, hey, what do you think I should do with whatever exit situation? And you would ask me, what do you think you should do? And I'm like, well, that's why I'm calling you. But it definitely helped my growth for sure. Like, being able to just think outside the box, think without emotions, because I think as women, we're very emotional in our responses. So it's like thinking before, thinking unemotionally before we make a decision. And I think what has helped me significantly is just being able to be a part of your book club, Books on Bellies.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Can you talk about that just real quick?
So I remember that there was a point in time where we as regionals felt that we needed to have more communication with you and be able to have more of a leadership or a different perspective whenever we were brainstorming with different things, big picture for the offices, not the little things like with the employees and stuff like that, but big picture as we were growing, what mindset we needed to have because we wanted to think more like you. So I remember initially it was us having breakfast, and just discussing these things. And then eventually we started to read books. And that has helped me significantly, because I mean, the first book we read was Emotional Intelligence. And I think that anyone that's going into leadership should read that book.
Mhm.
It was I was very vulnerable at the time because I knew my weakness. I knew that I was very, even though I'm very kind and I'm very giving and I'm willing to work hard and all these beautiful things, I knew that I needed help with speaking with people and not being so direct. There were many times that, speaking with employees, I realized like, man, I could have said that a little bit better.
Mhm.
And, there's a certain tact on how to speak to people and still tell them what you want them to hear, but in a nicer way.
Mhm. I think you said something amazing earlier that I think has been one of my greater directions I go, I guess, in management is letting people know it's okay to fail.
Oh, yes.
So when we
Mhm.
first, I don't know, the first 2 or 3 years, when let's say something small now was huge back then
Mhm.
to me. If a hygienist called out, it would literally ruin my day. Like I couldn't refocus.
Mhm.
And if a doctor called out, I was just done. Like
Mhm.
done for the day, couldn't refocus. And now something things that are a lot bigger happen and it's no big deal. So I
Mhm.
think what has really helped me is letting people have a chance and letting them know it's okay to fail
Mhm.
is how you let people learn on their own,
Yeah.
because you can't just give them the information
Mhm.
all the time. So um I don't know, do you have any specific examples of when like you maybe didn't agree with a path that an office wanted to go, but you let them try it, and whether it worked out or not, you at least gave them the chance?
I would say sometimes with hiring a certain
Okay.
personality. Yes, I think that was one that just popped in my head
Yeah.
is, you know, with us interviewing so many people now as we grow, there's sometimes an office it's like, oh, we can overlook that, but for me specifically, personality is something that you can't change,
Mm-hmm.
you can't train,
Yeah.
um, that person has to be willing to say, okay, I have this weakness and I want to work on it and attempt to, but you can't force someone to be nice.
Mm-hmm.
um so sometimes we have like these employees that are very well trained clinically,
Mm-hmm.
but then don't have great personalities, and the team thinking like, oh, we can work around that, we'll help them change
Mm-hmm.
when it's not initially what the person wants to do. That has been a challenge, not a challenge for them, but it's a moment where I've allowed them to just go ahead and hire the
Mm-hmm.
person, and then later on see that it didn't really
Right.
work out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, those are great examples. And again, though, that's how people grow.
Hmm.
So
For sure.
is letting them try, and then as long as it doesn't have the potential to take a practice down or something
Hmm.
catastrophic,
Correct.
is that's to me it's like the management 101 is,
Yes.
obviously care about the people you're dealing with, but as far as growth goes, 101 is you have to let people have a chance.
For sure. Hmm.
So what do you tell people, let's say a manager or a new hire that says, I want to grow in the company? What advice are you giving them?
Well, it's funny that everyone wants to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants to grow, but not a lot of people are willing to put the work in. And so I tell them that when I'm interviewing them, I say, hey, if you want to grow, this is the place for you, but you have to show me that
Mm-hmm.
you're willing to put the work. We'll see it. And if you show me that you're willing to take the extra step, then I will dedicate time. But if you're not showing me and every time we have a conversation, it's like, I still want to grow. but you haven't taken the initial step to start to self-developing, start having a ownership mentality, start being a servant leader to your team. All these different aspects is if you're not willing to outshine, then you're not ready to be mentored.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing that people need to understand. The best way for them to grow is actually helping others grow. And I think that's why I asked the question about how do you grow without only thinking about yourself? Because obviously self-development and you is extremely important, but the purpose of why you're working so hard on yourself and for the practice is actually, if it's for the right reason, other people, that's how you end up growing. So how have you been able to, I know it's very common for people not to hire somebody because they see them as a threat. So how do you become okay with hiring somebody that you know can be an amazing team member without it affecting, making you worried about your position at all?
Yeah. First of all, it makes me excited because it's like because we're growing at such a rapid pace, we need more help. So it makes me excited to just see people that are driven, that are willing to go the extra mile, come into the mix, because it just helps us significantly. Like we're at such a point that we need more leaders. But I was never given the opportunity to lead or mentor. And for me, it's important to give that opportunity to others, because I know that that was something that I was looking for at every job I went to. I wanted someone to notice and to like help me grow, and give me a chance, but that wasn't given to me. So if I have a specific office manager, well, now office manager, at the time he was at front desk, that would call me every week. And at first I was a little bit annoyed because I was like, I have so much things to do. Like, why are you calling me? But, Jackie, the other regional, mentioned, she was like, why don't you give him the time of day? Like, he's looking for it. Give it to him. And, now he's one of our office managers and part of my open dental SWAT team.
Oh, very nice. So you want to explain that real quick?
The open dental SWAT. So open dental SWAT team, it's actually called Operation Dental SWAT Team. It's a team that I started to build for when we get new practices, whether it's de novos or acquisition. They come in, help set up with open dental. We created a training guide that makes it a little bit easier for us to not miss any steps. And once that office gets transferred to open dental, they'll stay there for a week or so, just helping to train the team.
Gotcha. And so you're the regional of 6 practices now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So do you have any idea how many employees are in those 6?
Man, no, I've never.
Maybe like 75?
Probably.
Maybe more.
Maybe more, because Conway is very huge now with it being merged.
So would you say that you have gotten sophisticated enough as a manager that now managing 75 people was actually easier than managing the first 7?
1,000%. 1,000%. But it took a lot of self-development and going back to our book club, like us just discussing different tips and advice, learning new strategies of how to deal or speak with employees, and being vulnerable with each other to be able to call out and say, hey, you messed up this time, or like you could have spoken a little bit differently. Whatever the situation is, I feel like we have a strong team, not only like the leadership with you, but I can call anyone from the executive team. I can call anyone from, our accounting. Like, it's just such a great community that has been very important for me, specifically in my growth and my personal life.
Can you talk a little bit about the 360 Leader book?
Sure.
And and how that may have impacted you. And just, it's by John Maxwell,
Mm-hmm.
who's kind of one of, if not the leading authorities on leadership. And it's written from a perspective of a manager
Mm-hmm.
and how they're kind of in limbo where maybe you're not making the ultimate decisions on where a company
For sure.
goes, but you do have an impact. And then also you're somewhat tied to the day to day
Mm-hmm.
and the employees at all levels of the company, really. So how did that book specifically impact how you think as a leader?
It has helped significantly as a leader because, first of all, I thought that he wrote that book for me. Like, we wear so many hats. And at that time when we read the book, we didn't have a full marketing team. We didn't have a full accounting team. Like, we didn't have HR, like
Mm-hmm.
we did it all. And sometimes it felt overwhelming, having to wear these different hats and not knowing who specifically to go to first. Like, we would call each other and brainstorm and come up with an idea of how we would handle it. But I remember like it just being a stressful moment, and I think that helped us as an organization as well to be a little bit more organized as into who does what at the time, so that we weren't scrambling, like, oh, if Matt's not available, who do we call for the next, response?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you also mentioned like it's okay to just make the decision and we fail at it and recover later. But I think it was hard for us as regionals to know that we can make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, with the employee mindset, like just dealing with employees and just figuring out a way of how we could um, give more of the daily duties to the managers so that we could have more time to focus on other things
Mm-hmm.
or helping them grow as a practice rather than just doing the day to day with them.
So what are examples of things you've delegated to the managers that you don't have to deal with anymore?
Well, I feel like initially the employees, like having the employees go to their managers before coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I enjoy hearing from the employees, and if they have an issue that they feel comfortable enough to call me and talk to me about it. But I think you dealt with this as well, where, employees would call you before speaking with us.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to like become a front and say, hey, Matt, you need to tell them to come to us first before going to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing with the managers, having the employees go to the manager and speak about certain things was the biggest help for me specifically with time.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Are the greatest rewards in what you do and seeing the growth, is it the other people that you work with?
It's the other people and seeing how they were able, like, we have a lot of employees that are used to doing things a certain way
Mm-hmm.
and don't want to change. And I'm like, hey, just try this way. You'll see that it's going to be better for you. Like, in the
Mm-hmm.
long run, this system is going to help you. So that is a reward in itself when we see them being happier and like realizing like, hey, that does work in our office.
Mm-hmm.
But change is hard for everyone. Change is very difficult. Even for me, like change was hard, but it's knowing and adapting. Like I can't be the same regional that I was when I had 3 practices versus 6.
Sure.
Like, you have to morph and develop and continue changing. So me, that I like to be structured and know what's coming next, that was a little bit of a difficult moment, like just trying to like figure out, okay, it's okay to not know what's coming up next, but I still have to grow and develop in this season.
Mm-hmm. So besides doing podcasts, what stresses you out now?
I think that's like right now, that's still like the biggest. Me just public speaking has always been difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like our first managers meeting, we did it in one of the lobbies of Conway actually,
Mm-hmm.
and it was only like 5 of us, and I felt nervous then. Like I I was mentioning to you earlier that at school, whenever we had to present projects and stuff like that, I would not show up to school because I would rather, even though I did all the work, I would rather get a failing grade than to be in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it has have to change because uh we have so many employees now, and like whenever we do these big meetings, it's us up there, talking with them,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I just have to pretend that this is a performance, or like this is not who I am, like just prep myself mentally in a way where it gives me courage to speak. But it's that aspect has gotten better because I know the people I'm speaking to. I think
Mm-hmm.
that if it was like a group of strangers, I would get nervous.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this video recording thing is definitely the number one stressor.
I think what has helped me with that is repetition. Obviously, you just over and over. But I think when we first had those meetings, I was more nervous because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing still, because I was still relatively new to dentistry. So I think as the company's gotten bigger and we have more wins,
Yeah.
that I kind of lean on that as being more like it's a confidence builder for me, and it helps me to talk in front of people. One thing I still struggle with, and I would like for you to go back to it, is the difficult conversations. Like Crucial Conversations is another book that we read. I still have a hard time like looking someone in the eye and just saying like, you're slacking here, you need to pick it up here. Like,
Yeah.
how are you able to do that while still being emotionally intelligent?
Yeah. I try my hardest to just make sure that I'm not only speaking negatively in those meetings. Like, it's important to do the sandwich method where it's like you start with something good, talk about, what needs to improve, and then end it on a positive note. That has really helped me specifically, but also understanding them. Like, even though it may seem like an excuse to you, there's something that is rooted to their behavior. And knowing that, I think, helps us be a little bit more compassionate to whatever they're saying. And even if we don't have a direct way of fixing it in that moment, at least we know how to approach it because of X reason. Um, so I like to get to know the person to see what is the true root of why they're doing this a specific way, so that I can help them more than just have that crucial conversation. Because yes, we can have those crucial conversations, but then what is the follow-up? How do they know that they're important enough that you continue helping them through this struggle?
Right. So when you're hiring people, what are you doing to set the expectations for them from the beginning of not only like what they have to do day to day, but what's expected of them to fit into our culture and for them to grow with us?
Yeah. I am a firm believer of our culture. Like, to me, I'm very protective of that. So when I'm interviewing, yes, it's important to ask like the specific questions, like how long have you been in dentistry? But for me, it's more of a let me get to know you. I want to know your personality. I want to know your past experiences with jobs. I want to know what you like, what you dislike. And based on those like the responses, like I let them know what the expectation is from us. Because culture, I know how important it was for me being an employee at other locations, or even like the previous DSOs or other jobs, that you want to come to work happy. You spend most of your time there, and you want to feel valued, all of these different things. So it's important for me to let them know from the get-go my personal experience of what I felt working at other companies, and how we're different, and how like negativity is just something that I don't stand for. Because training them is going to be super easy once you have a great personality. You can train everything else, but personality is very important.
Mm-hmm.
and just letting them know that it's not something that we tolerate.
Does that help you if you've had those conversations? Does it help you have difficult conversations later since
For
you've already
sure.
established the
For
ground rules?
sure. Yes. It makes it easier for sure because they know, like, I was the one that had that initial conversation when we interviewed
Mm-hmm.
about the expectations of the office
Mm-hmm.
and how we don't tolerate negativity.
Right.
And so now the second conversation is where, you know, it's more of like, hey, we've already spoken about this.
Mm-hmm.
I expect you to change this immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I don't think we've touched on is servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Is like serving your team before even serving yourself. The story with Dr. Kelly at Conway, like when we first started, we would call you guys to figure out solutions to problems we were having in the office. But that specific day, Dr. Kelly walked into the office and we were having a bathroom issue. And Dr. Kelly was like, what's going on? And he was like, oh, don't worry, I'll clean it up. And we're like, what? Like, it was just his servant leadership, just serving the team without even knowing us for that long, but just showing that he was willing to do anything and to be a part of us. It didn't matter what he had to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've talked a lot about different things that you've had to do throughout your growth and that make you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because like letting people go, for example, is
Mm-hmm.
very difficult and it can be uncomfortable. So how are you willing to go through that discomfort for your growth?
I mean, it's been a journey because I think at each different stage it felt differently. Um, I would say that I always kept the end goal in my mind that, I want to continue improving myself
Mm-hmm.
and being the better version of myself and being the person you need me to be.
So how have you been willing or able to go through so many things that are uncomfortable for you, like letting people go? How have you been willing to go through that, knowing that comfort is such an easy thing to fall into if you are an employee, but if you want to grow, you have to get out of your comfort zone. So how have you been able to get out of your comfort zone?
I think definitely pushing myself to just it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, I just have to get through this moment. Um, I would say, like, just again, the support system. Like, we've become such a family here at Operation Dental, um, where we support each other whenever we're going through anything. So it's having the drive to get uncomfortable no matter what, remembering like your goals and what you're trying to achieve. And um, I think that, and just having the support system from the team.
So if you're going into an uncomfortable situation, or it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, do you sit down and think like, I'm doing this because of something in the future, like reminding yourself of why you're willing to go through it?
I think it's more than that. It's remembering, like, I've had to go through a lot of uncomfortable things to get to where I'm at today. So that is more of the reminder, like, hey, I'm the person I am today because I've gone through uncomfortable situations.
Mm-hmm. Well, I cannot thank you enough for everything you've done for us. And we've been working together now 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And your growth in the company, it really has been unlike anyone else's. So again, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your experience here. Hopefully people learn from it. And I look forward to the next discomfort with you.
Thanks.
Thank you.